What's up, you guys? Welcome to today's video. As you can tell by the title, I have an update for you guys. Now, before we kick this thing off, I have a few things that I would like to say before we actually get into the meat and potatoes of the video. The first being that the only reason that I'm speaking on this is because baby daddy, I know, it's cringy, I don't know what else to call him. He doesn't care if I talk about him. He's told me that I can say whatever I want about him online as long as I don't use his name, which I never have and never will do. So within the boundaries of what he has asked, I have made videos about him. Another reason why I'm making this video is because I really think that so many of you guys can relate to what I'm going through and relate to being sober and talking to our kids about addiction or having kids outside of that world. And while I'm not telling you what to do, I'm just telling you what I'm going through and my approach to it and how we have decided to deal with all of this. You know, I don't want to come on here and say my way is the way or this is the right way. I'm simply sharing with you how we've dealt with it. Take it as you will. You know your situation best. You know your child best. So I am in no way giving advice. This is just my story and this is just what we have done in our home. And you guys ask me a lot, you know, how do you talk to your kids about addiction? Do they know you've been to prison? Do they know this situation? Are you honest? And we're gonna break all of that down in today's video, as well as talk about the unfortunate situation that he is in right now and what that looks like for us. The last update that I gave you guys was over 6 months ago, and I believe I said in that video that, you know, he was calling and he was talking and now he is not. Now he's MIA, he's not calling. But I didn't share all of it, and the reason why I didn't share all of it at that time was because I didn't want to speculate on the situation. I wanted to know without a shadow of a doubt what was going on before I jumped on YouTube and made a video about it. So it took a little bit of time for me to get information on what was actually going on in his life. But I'm gonna back it up. I'm gonna be talking first about what the conversations between him and our daughter looked like. Now, it was very important to Micah that she had Reese's blessing, and even though that we knew that she couldn't articulate that, talking with baby daddy at first was uncomfortable for everyone, honestly. But it was very important that Reese sat her down and was like, girl, you know, this is amazing. Of course you can talk to him. This is so great. You know, you have an extra parent and you're, you know, we wanted it to be a positive thing. We've always been honest about the fact that Reese is not biologically Micah's father, but that doesn't make him any less of a father. And I promise you, if you tell Reese that that's not his little girl, he'll fight you over it. Micah is his daughter. Blood does not make a family, love makes a family, and that is Reese's little girl. But these conversations at first were okay, maybe a little uncomfortable, but okay. As the weeks progressed, he started to make Micah feel uncomfortable. He was starting to ask Micah for money, and he was asking me for money through Micah, which was very inappropriate, and I had to just put my foot down and set that boundary, like, whoa, I don't think so. That's not acceptable. That's not okay. And it's really not okay that you're saying it through, you know, a 7-year-old. So just out the gate, I had to set boundaries and let him know what is and is not acceptable for saying to Micah. A couple of weeks had gone by and I had to tell him, Micah doesn't like to call you daddy. You know, I mean, she just met you over the phone. You just maybe, can you please just pump the brakes with that because she's uncomfortable. And that's not something Micah would ever say to him. Micah is such a sweet-hearted, kind person that if they say something, she's not going to assert herself and say like, don't say that to me. She's not that kid. Anyway, the last conversation I had with him before the silence was that Micah doesn't want to call you that. She's uncomfortable. You have to just give her some time to adjust to that, you know? He didn't like that, and it made him mad, and then we didn't hear from him. So we had gone to Arkansas for Thanksgiving. 2 weeks prior to going to Arkansas, he stopped calling. Now, he was supposed to meet her for the first time. We were supposed to have lunch, spend the day together, and he was going to get the opportunity to meet his daughter for the very first time. And he didn't show. Now, I had already begun speculating that a relapse was possible because he hadn't called us, you know, leading up to the trip. We had made plans, we had set, you know, this date that we would get together and he would meet her for the first time. You know, I thought it would be just a fun day of hanging out. A little uncomfortable for me, if I'm being honest, but that doesn't matter. Building a relationship with him matters as long as he's doing the right thing, and I didn't want to box him out of a relationship with her. After he didn't show to meet her for the first time, I'm not gonna lie, I was pissed off. You know, that sucks, man. Like, no parent wants to see their kid let down. No parent wants to see their kid waiting for something that's not gonna happen, you know? So we just kind of carried on with our lives, heard nothing from him, and eventually I started asking around. You know, I do still have contacts in the town that he lives in, and I started asking, hey, can you ask around about dude and see if, you know, if he's okay, what's going on? And eventually, speaking with a few people in that town and speaking with his family, it became clear that he relapsed. His family is really concerned because they think he's not okay mentally after that much time. They think that he's struggling with PTSD and he doesn't know how to handle being in the free world, which is something that happens all the time. You know, it is very difficult to go to prison for 7 years and then come out and try to live a regular life, you know? The more research that I did, the more I realized that this has been a problem. His drug use has been a problem from day one, meaning that he was using drugs and tattooing in prison. I talked to a few people that were in prison with him, and it just all started to make sense, you know? The conversations, while they were okay, they were so inconsistent, and sometimes he'd ask for money, sometimes he'd seem upset, sometimes he'd be, you know, wearing a hoodie over his face. Like, it just wasn't, he wasn't okay. Sometimes he'd be at his family's house and he'd be okay and he'd seem sober and fine, and the next minute he'd seem dark and depressed and not okay. So that is consistent with PTSD. But I do know for a fact that he is using drugs. He is using methamphetamine again, which is the most addicting drug. And I'm helpless. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can say or do to help him get out of that. He has to want to get sober. I don't think he knows how to be sober, especially considering he hasn't been sober the past 7 years. He was using meth in prison as well. So he has a lot of work to do if he wants to be sober and if he wants to be a part of Micah's life. Now, as far as Micah, after a while, she asked me, do I still have 2 dads? And I could tell that she had been thinking about that for a long time. You know, like, where is this guy? Like, is he still around? Like, what is going on? And I was honest with her. And maybe some people might judge me for being honest with an almost 8-year-old. She's gonna be 8 in 2 weeks. Maybe you might judge me for being honest with my 8-year-old, but at the end of the day, I think it's important that we have these conversations. So I told my daughter, he struggles just like mommy struggled, just like daddy struggled, meaning Reese. He's struggling with addiction and he's just not okay right now. He's sick. And when he's better, hopefully he will call. But we just have to hope, and we have to hope that he gets better and that he isn't sick for much longer. Talking about addiction and prison and mental health with my children is important, and it's important to me. You know, I'm not telling you how to raise your kids, I'm just telling you how we're raising ours, and it's uncomfortable. But the thing is, if anyone told you that parenting is comfortable, they straight lied to you. Parenting isn't comfortable. Parenting is having those hard conversations, having that open dialogue with your child and letting them know they can trust you. I will always talk to her about the truth in an age-appropriate way. I will talk to her about addiction in an age-appropriate way. She doesn't need all the details. All that she needs to know right now is that he is sick and hopefully he gets better. And that's why he hasn't called. He hasn't called because he doesn't love you. He hasn't called because he's sick. As far as talking about prison, I tell Micah straight up, and now they think it's a game and they write me tickets all the time, but I tell her I got in trouble, just like you do sometimes. Sometimes you have to go in timeout. I had to go to grown-up timeout because I broke the law. I broke the rules. And when you break the rules, there are consequences. And that's an open conversation that we have all the time. And now Riley and Micah play cops all the time. They're the cops and they give me tickets. And as far as mental health, I never talked about depression growing up. If I am feeling depressed, I tell Micah, like, you know what? Mommy's really sad today. Do you want to just snuggle up and watch a movie? Or Mommy's really sad today. Let's go for a walk, you know? And because she's young, she'll say, why? Why are you sad? And I have to tell her, there is no reason. Sometimes my brain is just like, meh, be sad today. And I make it like a quirky little thing that we talk about. You know, sometimes my brain says, today you're gonna be sad, and we have to work through that. You know, I didn't talk about that growing up, just like I didn't talk about sex growing up. And while I know that a lot of parents are not comfortable talking to their children about sex, you can guarantee it, I'd rather my child hear the sex talk from me versus another 13-year-old that heard it from their older sibling or something, you know what I mean? I want them to have accurate information. I want them to trust me. If my kids are at a party and they need a ride home, they better call me at 3 o'clock in the morning and not get in a car with someone that has been drinking. These are hard conversations that we will have with our kids, and I want them to trust me. And if they're going to trust me, I have to be honest, and I have to have the hard talks, and I have to sit them down and let them know, like, this is your safe space. This home is your safe space. You're safe here. If you were ever in trouble, you call me, you call daddy. We're on your side, kid. We're here for you, you know? I don't know if I'm doing this right. I certainly never planned on having a child with a man I will never be with. Having a baby daddy. Shit happens. And I'm so grateful that I have my little girl, no matter how difficult it might be to communicate with him or see him struggle or know that he's not gonna call or not gonna show up. That's really hard because my heart breaks for Micah, but at the same time, that little girl is not missing out on any love. Reese is such an amazing father to her, and I'm so grateful for him. And I'm grateful that I had the time to think about the kind of parent that I wanted to be in prison. I'm not the best parent. I'm not sitting up here on my high horse saying that I'm such a good mom, that I have it all figured out, because I don't. Who knows? I could be doing the wrong thing. But at the end of the day, I have to go with my gut. I have to trust myself so that they trust me, and I have to do what I feel is right for my kids, you know? I know this update isn't a positive one. I was really hoping that it would be. I was really hoping I could give you guys good news, but there is no good news. He is using, he has relapsed, he has been using this whole time, and that breaks my heart for him. I really hope that he can work through his PTSD and work through addiction, because it's so hard. It's so hard to live in that life. I'm gonna end today's video with this. If you are in a similar situation than me, just know that you are not alone, and know that no parent has it all together. We are all just winging this thing. We're all just trying to do the best that we can. And if you've never been in my situation, please open your mind and open your heart to how difficult it is to deal with a loved one in addiction, or a parent of your child that's in addiction. It is heartbreaking. You lose sleep and you don't really know what to do. And I just implore all of you to have a little bit more kindness and compassion when thinking about drug addiction in prison, because it is not as simple as don't break the law. It's way more complex than that, as is addiction and mental health. And addiction and mental health often go hand in hand. They live in the same home. I really hope you guys understand where I'm coming from with this video. I love you. Stay safe, stay sober, and I'll see you in my next one.